Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Turner Hagen coming back to you here from Jaycox Implement in Laverne, Minnesota with episode number 2 of our tech tips. So in episode 1, we talked about creating boundary lines and the differences between an outer boundary and inner boundary, what they mean, as well as how to go about actually recording those if I have an implement hooked up or if I don't have an implement hooked up. As well as we elaborated on how they would help with our operation. So today's episode, we're going to be talking about guidance lines and specifically the field guidance line. So it kind of piggybacks off of that boundary line that we created, and we can use that in turn to create our guidance lines. So let's hop in the cab of the Magnum 340 and drive around and show you how to get it done. So now we're up in the cab of the Magnum 340 here. Everything's booted up. So guidance lines, you know, there's different types and each of them have a good application on when to use them. So, you know, making guidance lines is probably nothing new. You probably have done that several times, well, hundreds of times on various different systems. But again, today I just want to elaborate a little bit more about maybe some advanced guidance lines that you normally don't go into or you normally don't use that may be useful for your application or your operation. So here's just run one screen of the Pro 700 here. Again, basic things we need to get going first is make sure we got our implement selected. The other thing is I need to go to run 2 or go to I call this my precision farming tab, where I can select my grower, farm, and field. So we're in the same grower farm field as we were before or in last episode. So that way, if you look now and run 4, I can zoom this out. But here's our boundary lines that we created last episode. So again, these are automatically sourced with our grower farm field and our precision farming data, so I can reference these however many times I want to. Now that I have them created, I can always reference those file types here. But I got that all set up where I want to be. If we go back, we go to Toolbox. I just want to verify that my implement is set up correctly. So pretending today I have a disc hooked up. So I got a towed implement. My physical width is going to be 20 feet, but I'm actually going to turn my swath width to 234. So what that does is it allows me to have a 6-inch overlap for doing tillage work or something like that, so I ensure I have complete 100% coverage on my tillage. So a lot of you guys probably knew that already, but again, just a little review on setting up an implement so you can have that overlap and that coverage there. Bar distance, that's going to be basically from my rear axle to where the ground contact point is, so that would be my disc gang in this instance. And then I have my max steering angle, which you can vary. Default is 55 degrees, but this will basically tell the steering or the auto guidance system to not turn to this setting, or this will be the maximum amount of turn. So that way, if you got an implement with not long of a drawbar and you risk actually colliding your rear wheels or your duals with the drawbar, you can change that so it doesn't turn too tight and run into your implement per se. But anyways, a little basic on the implement setup, just a little review there for most people. So I'm going back to the run screen now, and usually with the default layout, run 3 is where I'm going to have all my guidance lines. So you got my swath map up here, my swath number, remark and nudge, and then big one is the swath recorder and my auto guidance and gauge switch. So swath 1 recorder, many of you are familiar with that. That's where we actually go in and record our swath. So where we actually say, okay, here's the lines that I want to map, and then it will reference that line and create my guidance lines after that when I get finished recording. So the one thing I need to add to this layout for today's video is I need to add swath manage. So if I go up here, I'm going to change my swath number. I'm going to get rid of that. So I'll go to Toolbox, Layout, go to run 3. I'm going to get rid of swath number, and I'm going to add swath manage. And we'll see why this is useful coming up here in a little bit. So to review the guidance lines types, right here is our different types. So again, swath room recorder, that's where we're actually going to record our swath. If I go to type here, just to review, so straight, that's going to be your basic good old AB line. So I plot an A point, I drive ahead, and I plot a B point, and it's just going to draw a straight line between those 2 points. One thing to remember, that with a straight guidance line, you have 2 options. You can either mark A or enter A. Enter A is what you want to use if you actually have, say you're bringing in a John Deere guidance line, since there is some compatibility issues with which north the system is using, you can enter in your GPS coordinate right there and it'll plot that point. But for a basic start, what I always recommend, guys, is if they're starting a new line for the year or for a new field, you just plot mark A, and you drive ahead, you're 30 feet, you hit mark B, or however long you want to drive ahead, and then it will draw that straight line between there. Another option or swath type I have is heading. So a heading line, it's a little bit different. All I have to do is mark my A, and then what I can do is I can set from 0 being north to 270 degrees being straight west, but I can adjust my angle all the way around from my point. So it's going to draw a line basically at the angle I suggest, so 90 degrees, let's say, from my A point. And so now I have straight east-west guidance lines that I can use. The advantage is that it's a straight line right away. I don't actually have to go to my first point and to my second point, and then I have that issue where on the next pass it will be a little bit off because I was physically driving that. Now I have it where it's set up, I can engage on that line right away, and I won't have any issues with following or overlap there. The other one, primary one that you'll probably use is the curve line. So with the curve line, it's a little bit different in that instead of just an A point and a B point or plopping a point in the map and drawing an angle, I'm going to be constantly recording my position, so that way if I got something where I need to contour or follow a fence row or something like that, it's going to keep mapping those points and plot that line out, so that way when I'm finished with the line, it will mirror that curve or that line basically where I drew based on my swath width. So where this comes in handy is on headlands. Say I got my end row passes I want to have guidance on. Well, what I can do is on my first pass I can start my curve line, then my next 2 or 3 or 4, however many passes I have after that, it will perfectly mirror that same path I took on my first one. So that allows me to have good spacing and less pinching or waving on my guess rows on my end row pass. So these are all great lines. Again, nothing wrong with using them. Some other ones you may have seen in here, circle. That's going to be for like pivot irrigation, where it's honestly just going to draw a circle around and keep spreading it out around the circle. Spiral, what that's going to be is instead of running, let's say, a curve circle where I draw a perfect circle, it's going to basically start to spiral out and give me a spiral from a center starting point. So those are all good, but again, for our market, probably isn't going to be what's going to be used. So the final guidance line type that really want to go in depth today is the field type. So you may have seen it there, but maybe ask yourself, okay, what does this even mean? What does this do? So with a field guidance line, it basically allows me to set up one guidance line that I can use for the entire field, both on my end rows as well as my interior or my straight up and down passes that I want to use. So when I first start out, I select field, obviously, and I'm going to edit the name here. I'm going to call it off boundary, just so I can separate the two ways of creating this guidance line. So I'll go off. So now I got my name in here, and when I'm ready to go, I'll hit start. So there's, like I hinted at, there's two different ways of recording this field guidance line. So there's the one way is actually driving it, which is be continuous driving, which we'll show in the next half of this video. And the first one is to create from boundary. So what I can do is, here's my boundary line or boundary file that I created in the previous episode. So I can go in here and select this boundary, and what it is going to do is, based off that boundary file, it's going to develop the guidance line for whatever my working width is set to. So it's going to set it to half a working width on the first swath or the boundary, so that way it's offset correctly, and then it will be able to draw 3-4 headland passes of my outside round. So that way I just have my one outside round boundary line or guidance line that I can use, and I don't have to switch between 4, 5, 6 different lines. So what I can do is hit yes to this, and I want to change to this. Depends on, again, your settings that you have for your auto guidance. This is just warning you that it might have to adjust the shape because of the minimum turn radius. You can edit that if you need to. I usually set that to 30 or 35 feet, whatever the minimum turn radius I want for that implement. But here I have it set correctly, so I'll go in here and hit OK. And for this one, what I'm going to do is hit accept first. So the first thing I need to do in here is go up, and this is where, since we added swath manage, what I need to do is edit this to select my mode. So with the mode, I'm basically going to do 3 different things. I can do round headland, which actually is going to create a spiral off of that boundary file that I created. I can do interior, which that's going to be for my non-headland passes, or basically my normal rows or my normal guidance lines. Or I can do square headland. So square headland is going to follow the outside boundary, but it's going to square the corners off for me. So what I'm going to select, and what I'm going to recommend, is use the square headland. And now I got that selected in here. And what I can do is go in and hit edit. So now I can edit basically where I want my starting and stopping point to be for this guidance line. So if I go in here, I'm going to modify, and see how this one's in red? So that's the line I have selected. If I hit these arrows up and down, I'll select the 2 different lines that I'm trying to edit on there. So what I can do is I'm going to go to B here. I'm going to edit this so that this goes around my curved portions here, goes in my square corner, and then comes down. I'm going to go to my other one. I'm going to move my A. I'm going to move that up so that they're pretty much matching, or as close to matching as I can get here. So now, basically, it allows me to have just one line that's going to reference and draw guidance lines for the whole boundary. So what I can do now is tell how many headlands I want. So I can go 2, 3, 4. There's really as many as I require on here. But for this, I'm just going to use 3 headlands and leave it at that. So now I got my line set up how I want it. I can just hit accept, and now it drew my line for me. So what I can do is go ahead here, So you see there's this green one right here. That's basically the line that it created here. So I'm gonna go off of this one here. Now what I can do is hit engage. And now my tractor is going to follow my boundary line that I created. So what this allows me to do is, since I can base it off of boundary lines, is I can basically off of my boundary file, if I have mismatched equipment, so let's say I got a 30-foot wide planter and a 90-foot boom sprayer, what I can do is off my boundary file, I can create two different guidance lines for those implements. So that way I can basically mirror or match and follow my headland passes perfectly every time. So again, kind of the same disclaimer I gave in the last episode, but with WAS, you know, it's going to get you close. It's good for broad acre tillage, but if you want precise in-row, in-season guidance, you're definitely going to want to be on RTK to really follow and use that repeatability with our guidance lines. So what I'll do here is we're going to go all the way up to where my square headland is, or where my square corner is. And I'll show you guys what it looks like with it being squared off like that. So what it did is, since I was engaged, it drew a corner there for me. What I can do, what normally it looks like is it does that. It'll, instead of rounding the corner off, it'll just draw a straight line, since I got a square headland connected. So I'll back up my theoretical implement into the corner here and take off. And now I'm engaged. So that was creating a guidance line off of a boundary file. What we're going to do now is create a second field swath, but this time I'm going to go and do continuous driving or continuous recording. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create another field guidance line, but this time I'm going to do it so that I'm going to drive the line instead of base it off of a boundary. Let's say you didn't have a chance to record boundary lines, or you don't have boundary lines recorded, but you want to use this field guidance line. What I'll do, go to swath recorder 1. I'm going to edit the name on this again, and I'm going to say, call this one driving. So go in here, hit start again. This time I'm going to select continuous driving. So this is going to be pretty simple to what I had when I was doing my boundary line creation. So I got a pause and a stop. So what pause is going to be useful for is, again, if I'm doing square corners. So again, I'm recording right now. So let's say I come in and I have a square corner I need to do. So I'll drive into the corner like I would if I was driving it manually. I'll hit pause. Now that it's highlighted, it's not going to try and record data. It's not recording GPS data, it's basically just saving it off of that point that I had. I'll position to get where I want to be with my implement. So now if I'm ready to go, what I can do is hit pause. Now it's going to start recording again. So now you just got to drive the headlands just like you would any other time, and you're recording basically your outside pass. So again, let's say I'll make this corner here, and let's say I want to draw a perfectly straight line that, you know, me hand driving it, I just can't get it quite straight enough for my perfectionist ways. So what I'll do, hit pause, then I'll drive ahead. And now I'm where I want to be on the other edge of the field. If I stop, unhit pause, now what's going to do is it drew a straight line from the previous point. So now I have a perfectly straight line. So now that way the neighbors, if they go by, they'll really question how you got it so straight there. So when I'm done, let's say normally you'd create or finish your circuit there. It would auto-complete, or what you can do is just hit stop and it will complete the line for you type deal. So I'm actually going to hit done, and I want to change to that swath. So basically what it did is from my done point, it just drew a straight line to where my first point was. So that's all it was really doing there, and that's what it was warning me. So hit accept. Now this time what I want to do is again go to edit. Actually I need to go in here and change just to square headland. I want to go to edit, and now I can edit these lines like I did on the first pass. So that way I have my square headlands, and I have the total number of circuits that I want for my end row passes. Hit accept, and there's my 3 passes right there. So again, pretty useful feature. Allows you to keep your guess rows really tight between passes on your planner and stuff, so that way you have a really good looking field when everything's said and done. So that's for the outside passes. So let's say now I've done doing the outside passes, and I want to go and do my main passes, or my interior of the field passes. So what I can do is, again, not even change my swath type or record another swath. What I can do is I can go in here, change this to interior, and hit edit. And now what I can do is I can draw either a curve, straight, or record another one, but my interior line. So what I can do is, let's say I want to have it be as close to straight east-west as I can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my B point down a little ways here. I'm going to go my A point and move it over to here. So now if I move this down, There you can see now my heading is 270, so that's straight west, east-west line right here. So what I can do is I can manipulate this. So again, I get a straight east-west line, or if I want to go on a slight angle, I can make it go at a slight angle. Really, you get all the flexibility that you want there. And I can also make it do a curve. So say if I want to just mirror this end piece right here. So what it's going to do, if I look at run 4, you can see it basically where I drew my A and my B. It's going to follow that first contour and then draw lines off of that. So it perfectly matches that. So let's say you got a waterway or a contour in the field. What you can do is use that curve line, and it will follow that curve and contour for you as needed there. So let's see here. I'm going to go back to square headland, accept, interior, go to straight, put my B back here, my A over here, and now I'm ready to go drive the interior portions of the field. So field guidance lines, I think they're got a really good use, especially if you're doing strip tillage, anything where you're wanting to do something in row and have that repeatability. A field guidance line will basically give you the most repeatability that you're gonna get. So just to recap, field guidance lines, the advantage to them is basically it's a one-stop shop. I can record my outside pass, then I'll have all the rest of my end row passes that I can use and engage guidance on. And then I can also set up my interior line. So again, I'm not recording basically more than one guidance line. So it allows for simple operation, allows for basically allows me to use auto guidance to its most maximum potential. Helps eliminate any sort of issues, especially on the end rows where I got the planter tracking closer or wider. It basically takes the human side out of it and allows for nice, clean, precise fields. So if you have any questions on what you saw today or any suggestions for future topics of tech tips, feel free to drop us a comment down below. If you like what you saw today, give us a thumbs up, and we'll see you on the next one.